Welcome, everyone. This is the How to Choose a Teacher Training and Get the Most Out of It webinar. This really came out of a desire to share what I've learned over the last decade of teaching teacher trainings and over 33 years of yoga practice, and getting a lot of questions from people who want to know what training to do, where to do it, what style. What do I need to look for? So I figured I would create this that would answer a lot of those questions and hopefully inform you so that you not only find a good teacher training, but that you find perhaps a teacher, and yoga teachers can really be life teachers in so many ways because of the practice of yoga and what it offers. And also, I'd love this to inspire those of you who maybe weren't thinking about doing a teacher training, but I'd like to inspire you to do one because it's such a transformative experience. And we're living in such volatile and changing times with a lot of stress and a lot of busyness and a lot of confusion, particularly mental confusion. And the practice of yoga is designed exactly to address those issues, to bring us back into a state of balance, to give us tools to really thrive in life, and not just abundance in the external world, but the kind of abundance that comes within when you start to settle into who you really are and start to feel your gifts, your power, your purpose, and start to build more vitality, more ease in your life, more mental clarity, and also a connection to like-minded people and community who have that same love of self-knowledge, self-realization, and that same love of wanting to serve and uplift and help others. So this yoga tradition is just such a rich resource for all of us to tap into these time-tested tools that help to lead us to a place of excellence. So in the big picture, I encourage all people who are interested in consciousness, who are interested in furthering themselves and moving through old conditioned behavior and learning how to shift their state of consciousness so we don't get stuck in anxiety, depression, or any of these maladies that so many suffer with in these days. So the yoga tradition is, in a way, it's been relevant for thousands of years, but in a funny way, it feels like it's so extra relevant at this time with what's going on the collective and global level. So if you haven't been thinking about a teacher training, I really hope when you watch this that you consider it if the practices of yoga resonate with you. It's a lifestyle practice. It's so much more than getting onto a yoga mat and stretching and strengthening your body. So I wanted to just set that stage first, because what we're talking about here is embarking on, really, when you're getting into good 200 and 500 hour teacher trainings, we're embarking on like a university level study, and the kind of study that will continue hopefully throughout your whole life as you gradually deepen and learn more. And some things that seemed out of your grasp or reach when you first start to train, that all those things start to drop in like pennies dropping as you deepen in your own practice, or as you start to teach. Yogi Bhajan said a very interesting thing. He said, if you want to master something, teach it. Because in order to teach it, you have to study it and experience it at such a profound level that what you share comes from your direct experience and not just a regurgitation of what you've learned. So that's a little preview. You know, a good teacher training will give you that. It will give you those tools to thrive in your life and to become a person in service of others, to have the tools that you need to serve others. I remember a poignant moment in my life where I was actually producing television shows, and I started to feel that sense of, what do I want to be? What do I want to do as I'm getting older? And I realized that a really important thing for me was that I could be of value to people. I could be more valuable the older I get, rather than less valuable. And so that was one of the initiating factors for me to do my first teacher training. The other thing was a poignant moment also when one of my teachers in San Francisco at the time said to me, you know, when life got in the way of yoga, I made yoga my life. I thought when I heard that, wow, that's what I want to do. And so I followed that. And it's been the most enriching and extraordinary path. So there's all of that lays ahead for you. So what I want to say is a kind of a practical thing right now, and that is that you can talk and you can leave your little messages in the feed chat box to the side. So you can just put your cursor over the screen here and you'll see a little box, and then you'll be able to drop in questions. Hi there, and we have Renee, Heba, James, Jean, so many of you already using that little chat box. Wonderful. So after I go through the list of the things that I wanted to specifically share with you, I'm open to answer any questions that may come up. So just to give you the broad strokes of where we're going today, I wanted to look at the 3 biggest mistakes that are often made when people are looking for a teacher training. I wanted to look at the 5 key things that your teacher training should include, because as with anything else in life, not all teacher trainings are created equal. And if you're going to invest the time and money, you want to make sure you invest it wisely. We're also going to cover how to know if the teacher is right for you, and the importance of location and community, something that's not always talked about, but that's something that, at least for me, is key when it comes to teacher trainings. And then the importance of yoga lineage and history. Again, a key thing in this world where we're seeing so many different evolutions and ways of presenting the yoga practice. So that's a key one to cover. And then the Yoga Alliance certification, and why that is considered by many to be, you know, a benchmark of a training. And then lastly, I'll follow it up with just some valuable attitudes and practices that you can employ that will help you to get the most out of your training. So that's a little road map of where we're going here tonight. So starting on the 3 biggest mistakes. These kind of all go into one overall, but it's just that many people think that getting a 200-hour certificate is enough, and they just want the 200-hour certificate, not understanding just the vast differences between one training and another. So just going for a 200-hour certificate so you can go out and say that you have that is obviously, it's not enough. The style, the curriculum of the school, these are things I'll cover more later, but these are so very important. So this is, when you're getting into yoga teacher training, you're getting into a very personal relationship between teacher and student. So you do want to make sure that the teacher is somebody whose legacy, whose lineage, whose teachings you want to continue. And that's really the second point or mistake that I would say here is we have to do due diligence on the teachers that are doing the trainings, as all trainings are not created equal, all teachers are not created equal, and it doesn't mean that anyone's bad or anyone's good. It's just, is that the person that resonates with you, that you would like to learn from? Is their teaching style something that you resonate with? Is their personality something you resonate with? Or is that style of yoga something that you really resonate with? And I've had so many horror stories of people who have just randomly picked trainings and obviously invested a lot of money and time, and then recognized that when they came out of the training, they didn't get what they had anticipated getting, or it hadn't served them in the ways that they had been looking for it to serve them. So just good to go in kind of with your eyes open and do your due diligence. And then lastly, it's sort of often we'll think, well, I just have this period of time off, so I'm going to find a training that's in this period of time. That's what I have off. And wow, for example, India's exotic. It's the birthplace of yoga. I'll just do a training there. And I do many of my trainings in India, and I run into people who have just randomly taken a training in India, because of course we may have that belief that because it's coming from India, it's going to be what we need, but it might end up being a training that is perhaps very esoteric, and the teachings are not applicable when you want to be teaching in a Western yoga studio, or the teaching is not up to par with many of the teachings and the classes that are happening in the West now. And that's the interesting thing, is that there's this evolution of the yoga tradition, and so there's a lot of very, very experienced Western teachers now, sourcing obviously from the rich culture and the tradition of yoga in that authentic way. And then you have people in India who are seeing this yoga boom happening in the West, and they're wanting to jump on the bandwagon. And so again, not all teacher trainings are created equal. So we want to make sure that when we make the investment, we've done our due diligence and we've checked it all out. And so, we're wanting to look for a school or a studio or training where there's some kind of references, so you can understand what actually is being offered. You want to figure out if you can meet the teacher. And if you can't meet the teacher, can you read something they've written online, blogs, etc.? Do they have classes online you can go to? So any way that you can get a little bit more direct experience of what you're getting involved in. And we'll get into a little bit more of this as we go on. So that was really the kind of the main red flags, if you like, things to look for, so that you make sure that you're investing your time and energy wisely, and that you are getting connected to a style and lineage of an authenticity of teachings that you really want to be embodying and taking forwards. So again, those are important matters, I think, when we're investing this level of time and money. So nextly, 5 things that your teacher training should include. So number 1 here, I'm going to say, is from my own experience in trainings, we want to do a training that has an excellent, comprehensive manual, because we can't ignore the importance of the written word, the importance of visual illustrations, whether it's of physical asana postures, so you can look at the lines of the body and the correct instructions to help stabilize the body that you would be teaching. You want to have some form of visual representation of the energetic body, so that the mind can start to grasp what we mean when we talk in yoga about the subtle body. So visual imagery, written word, and a comprehensive manual that helps you to slowly unfold the teaching step by step, and a manual that you can go back to. Because here's what I discovered. I was such a newbie in I'd been practicing yoga for a long time, but when I took my first teacher training, the amount of information was extraordinary. And so I could grasp a certain level of everything that was offered, but it wasn't until later, when I went back to my manual and I started to go through it, that I could actually study at a deeper level. And then when I started to teach, of course, the manual had all the gems that I needed to be able to start teaching from a place where I felt like I had the information at my fingertips. So I really think that if the training doesn't have some form of comprehensive manual, then to me that would be a red flag, because that's a resource that you take forward with you. So that would be my number one. My number two is a holistic presentation of yoga. So if you're interested in the totality of what yoga has to offer, and I really hope that you are, because again, this is such a rich tradition that has the tools that can help us to thrive on all levels of our being. So you want to make sure that you're engaging in a training that is offering you the mind, the energy, and the physical perspective. So, you know, that referencing of yoga is this union, it's this yoking, it's this synchronization of mind, body, energy, spirit, all of that. So in other words, you want a training that is going to touch on all of those essential elements and help you to learn how to weave those different elements together into a cohesive whole. That cohesive whole is you. That's you learning how to sift through all the different layers of your being that the yogis in their vast wisdom and subtlety figured out. You know, how do we work this physical body to maximize our strength and health and vitality? On the energetic level, how do we move through stuck emotions? How do we transcend some of the old emotional and energetic patterning that holds us bound into an unconscious way of living? And then on the finest and really the most important level, how do we start to change the way we're thinking? And again, this is why the yoga tradition is offering just the most extraordinary, holistic path for moving through life in a balanced and stable way. So if we can, as the Guru Nanak said, if we can master the mind, we can master the world. And so that's that key element there. So a holistic approach to yoga. Number three is a comprehensive element of philosophy and history. And already what I'm sharing, a lot of it is the philosophy of yoga. So understanding the whole sort of moral code, if you like, of engaging in life and living in a way where we're not creating more suffering and karmic implications, but we're actually learning how to take actions that are leading us into more and more joy, more and more liberation, more freedom, deeper presence, deeper awareness. So the philosophy part is huge, and the history, just to get the context of where this information is coming from and the vast body of the teachings of yoga. I think that what is offered, generally speaking, in the West is a very titrated form of yoga, you know, which is the asana practice, which is such an important and valuable thing for us all. But as teachers, if we really want to be able to serve our students, to help guide them to experience their own infinity, if you like, their higher self, their deeper presence, power, then we need to really have understood the depth of the teachings, the breadth of the teachings. And when you start to delve into the historical context and understand the sheer dedication that these master yogis had that allowed them to access the level of insight and intuition that they had, from which they then delivered the teachings. And we get to benefit from that effort that they made and that flow, if you like, of their creative wisdom. And that same wisdom is within each and every one of us. Again, it's just about learning to clear away the masks so we can really sit in that seat of wisdom and self-mastery. So the philosophy and history part is key. And then nextly, you want to make sure that your teacher training is giving you actual teaching experience. Because otherwise what happens is you come out of your teacher training with a lot of book knowledge, but you don't come out of it with a lot of personal experience. And we want to learn how to take the information that we're gathering in our own body from our personal practice. We want to figure out how do we take that information and start to deliver it in a way that other people can understand. We want to start to learn how to develop our voice as a teacher. And, you know, I think the number one fear that people have in the world is actually public speaking. And I was terrified when I did my first practice teach in front of my then teacher, Mati Ezrati. All I could do was stare at the floor as I spoke the words out. I was too afraid to look up at the person I was teaching, and definitely too afraid to look over to Mati, who was watching. And yet, after a while, the confidence came, and it just grows and grows and grows from there. So what better place to learn to get that confidence than actually with your peers who are studying the same thing as you, and with your teacher to give you feedback. So this is an invaluable part of a excellent teacher training. This actual putting you in the hot seat and you learning to hold space, to teach, to give adjustments if that's part of the training and the style, and you know, to learn how to speak to what the students need that are in front of you. So that's a vast body of knowledge that comes alive when you actually start to do it. And when you actually start to teach, you'll find that all that you've been studying starts to make sense and come through you. And so it's a valuable aspect. The fifth part, which is my favorite personally, is an emphasis on self-study. A great teacher training will have a significant emphasis on self-study. We call it svadhyaya. It's this idea of self-regulation, self-correction. So starting to learn to witness yourself and to observe when you're acting out of integrity, or when you're stuck in particular emotions, or you're in some crazy mental loop. Just cultivating the ability to witness that, observe yourself, and start to change and correct your behavior. And self-study inevitably covers a lot of things, but that's the crux, really, of the entire yoga system, because if we're not involved in a process of self-study, then how can we be alert to the tendencies that are causing us to behave unconsciously, and then how could we be alert to, therefore, how to change them? So what we want to do is to create that ability in our lives to get really skillful at self-reflection and self-correction. And guaranteed, if it's part of your teacher training, then you know that the person leading the teacher training is involved in that as well. And it illuminates just another level of authenticity, where somebody's not just teaching something, but they're actually embodying what they're teaching. And of course, the transmission, therefore, of what they're teaching comes at a much more profound level. So there's that. And then I wanted to add another one on here, which would really be a number 6, but it's the business of yoga. Because yes, you may go into the teacher training and you're just doing it for your own personal growth. Fantastic. And maybe you just want to teach your friends and your family. However, if you do intend to do a 200-hour teacher training, for example, and then get out there and teach, you need to have an understanding of what is going to be required of you on a business level. Like, how do you set up your first teaching gigs? How do you market yourself? etc., etc. So all of that is a very important aspect of a training that will give you the tools and the confidence of knowing what it is that you need to do when you get out there and you start. So that would be my the 5 things that your teacher training should include, which then kind of leads me on to how to know if the teacher is right for you. It's, in my experience, it's such a personal relationship, because in the practice of yoga, a lot of it is being transmitted verbally. Do you resonate with the person? You know, do you resonate with their heart? Do you resonate with their voice? Do you resonate with the authenticity of who they are and the choices they're making in their life and how they're delivering the teachings? I think that's all important, actually, if you're looking to emulate somebody. And then inevitably, when you do a teacher training and then you start to teach, before you have developed your voice, you are going to emulate the person who has been teaching you. So you want to be emulating somebody that you feel connected to, that you feel inspired by, and whose teaching style you resonate with. So those are the main things I would say when you think about the teacher that you want to learn from. When I did my teacher training, I sought out the 2 teachers who had been the most impactful to me to that point. I absolutely adored them. They were the best in my mind at what they were doing. When I did my teacher training, Chuck Miller and Matti Esrati, who started Yoga Works. And I had the great fortune then, I picked somebody who was, again, absolutely supreme in her teaching as my mentor. And then from then on, I always sought out who I felt was the best that I could possibly get to in that field, and the people whose company I sought out, whose company I felt better in, people who already knew the answers to questions I didn't even know to ask. So I encourage you, when you look for a teacher, look for that level of inspiration, because your experience will be so rich and so vast. Great. So then the importance of location of a training and the community that will support you. To me, location is about it's like finding a power spot, a location that supports the study of yoga, an environment that supports the study of yoga, and a community will be built around that. There may be a community already connected to that location that offers inspiration for us to further embody the teachings of yoga at a deeper level. So for me, those things are important. I choose to do my teacher trainings at either the Himalayan Institute in Pennsylvania. It's one of my favorite locations because it's been an ashram for 35 years. There's been a dedicated group of practitioners practicing and studying there all that time. There's a meditation shrine that is incredibly powerful, and just this living, breathing lineage of teachings that when you go there and you tap into it, it really exponentially shifts your growth and your understanding. And that's another reason why I love to do trainings in India, because you go to India, you're in the birthplace of yoga, and you're surrounded by a culture that come from, in so many ways, are coming from that tradition of yoga, and the devotion in their lives, and a lot of the main yogic principles are right there in just how they're living. And personally, what I found was when I sat to meditate in India, I'd been learning about it for 10 years, how to meditate, and I'd been intellectually trying to figure that place out, but it wasn't until I sat to meditate in the Himalayas in India that the meditation experience awakened in me. And that's the kind of thing that can happen when you go somewhere that's really conducive to the full experience of yoga. I know that's not always possible for everybody, but just think about that when you embark on your training, you know, the location, and whether or not that is really helping you to integrate the teachings at another level. Something to think about. Community is it's the juice of the practice. It's such a precious thing. When you do your teacher training, you will find you'll meet friends that will become life friends. And why? Mostly because you go through such a strong personal transformation as you go through the teacher training that you experience a real rawness and a real opening and a holding space for others holding space for you, and this kind of exponential growth of awareness and perception, and you share it as a group, and that bond is just such a precious thing. And so I love that element of community. I love it when I see different people coming from different trainings that they've done and meeting each other, and then they'll travel to other trainings to do together, and here we are. We've created like this global community of friends and people who are supporting us in our vision in life. So that's a huge part. Just remembering that you're not alone in your yoga practice, and if you feel alone, reach out and connect to community, because there's so much inspiration there, and there's support there, not only the emotional support that we might need from time to time, but also opportunities. I got my first teaching class, my first class to teach came through a fellow student in my teacher training, who couldn't teach that day and reached out and said, hey, do you want to teach? I was like, sure. I didn't tell him until afterwards that I'd never taught before, but the class worked out okay anyway. But it's that kind of thing, you know, you're there and you know each other, you know each other's capacity and capability, and so naturally when opportunities come, you will share them. So that's another great part. So moving on here to yoga, lineage, and history. The core of this is just simply to make sure when you're embarking on a teacher training that it does have its roots in the authentic tradition of yoga. There's a lot of wonderful evolution happening in the yoga community. And I think that's natural, because the practice has to evolve to meet the practitioners where they are, in the context of where they are, and the consciousness of where they are. But at the same time, we want to make sure that the core practices that we're teaching are these true, tried, and tested formulas over the eons. So in other words, we're not making up things to share that could actually have quite devastating consequences on people down the road. So just making sure that the training and the teacher have an authentic connection to the teachings of yoga and the richness of that tradition, the authenticity of that tradition. So then lastly here is the kind of Yoga Alliance certification and what this means. It's quite actually a relatively modern thing. There's the regulation board. And it's a useful bar to be able to see, if somebody is abiding by the general idea of what a holistic 200-hour teacher training would include. And having said that, Yoga Alliance trainings, one training could differ vastly from another one in just because of who's teaching it and where they place the emphasis. But generally speaking, it's going to give you a good guideline as to the standard of the training, and so that's important. And then the key things that will just help you to maximize your experience of a teacher training. when you go in, just going in with an open mind. And what I love to say to everybody who comes to teacher training is, you know, there's different lineages, there's different ways of doing something. And the moment that we think that we have the only way, we're no longer in a state of yoga. We're no longer practicing union. So it's important when you embark on a teacher training that you keep an open mind and that you're engaging with people who are not so dogmatic in their approach that they're saying that this is the only way. Because yoga is about finding the oneness, the union, that which connects all of us. And practicing the yes and philosophy, finding the middle ground, learning within ourselves to become masters of polarity, so we're not caught in the dual mind of good, bad, black, white thinking, and learning to really sit in that inner state of the wise one, wisdom, intuition, connection. So that's what we're looking for when we embark on a practice, and when we are looking for the right training and teachers. Is that person, is that training going to help me to become closer to who I know I really am at the core of my being? Is this training going to give me the skills that I can actually translate these beautiful and exquisite teachings of yoga to other people, so that I can actually help other people get well, to release stress, to open themselves creatively, to let go of behaviors that are not serving, and to live a life of excellence, with joy, with love, and all of that. So that's my hope for all of you. So thank you for tuning in with me. I wanted to just let you know kind of what my offerings are out there. You can find it all on my website, kiamiller.com. I do 1 200-hour teacher training a year, one, sometimes two. The next one I'm doing is in August at the Himalayan Institute, that beautiful percolating pot of Himalayan Institute, where transformation happens pretty quickly in my experience. So lovely place to go. And then I offer my 300-hour is 5 modules. So I have, each one is about a week long, and you focus in depth on different subjects: pranayama, meditation, kriya, so the art of understanding how to regulate, move energy, meditation. I'm not sure if I'm catching them all here, but you'll find them all on my website. And another one on awareness and lifestyle, so how to really live yoga in every aspect of your life. And again, those are about a week long, and you can find them on my website. Wishing you all just a great deepening connection to your yoga practice. And if you have any questions, please pop them in right now so that I could see them, and I'd be happy to answer them. Rebecca, you're saying, thank you, you've already done your 200-hour. You wish you'd heard this beforehand. I'm happy the training that I did, but I did need more teacher practice. Cheers. Ah, thank you, Rebecca. I know that's that key element that often gets squeezed out of a training, but that's where you learn so much. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And anybody else who has any questions, just pop them in to the chat and I would answer them. Oh, great. And Tanya, you're saying, thank you. You inspire me. I appreciate the encouragement to get more than just the 200 hours. Yes, and I didn't really go into that, but that's the thing. If you really want a full comprehensive body of information, a 500-hour training is the way to go ultimately. And of course, you can take your time, and it's almost better if you take your time, because you integrate what you did in a 200-hour, but then you gain more in the 500 hours. So those extra 300 hours really help you to go deeper into your own personal transformation and personal experience of the practice so that you can teach from that place. And they help you to go deeper into specific elements that might be of interest to you, because obviously this is a vast body of information in the yoga tradition, and there are so many ways that you can specialize within yoga that really resonates with you. So absolutely. Jean, you're saying, how does one go about the next 300 hours after doing the 200 hours? So if you love the school that you're working with, then you would look into if they have a 300-hour program, or you would look into somebody else who really inspires you to do your 300-hour with. Generally speaking, you don't have to do the 2 and the 300-hour with the same school, so that you can therefore, decide how you want to do that. And then, so obviously, again, figuring out everything that we went through in terms of which one you embark on. Oh, and Tommy has just stepped back in the room and said, how does it work for mine? And so if you wanted to get involved in my 300-hour, just check out all of the offerings on my website and see, when they are. I do them in different locations depending on the training and depending on the communities that I'm serving at that time. And so the way I laid out my personal 300-hour or the Radiant Body Yoga 300-hour is that you do a module, a 6-day, and then you have a period of time to really integrate, do those practices and embody them, and then you do another one. So basically the 300-hour would be done over a series of years. And what I found is that really helps you to embody the teachings at a different level, and you don't get overwhelmed with all the technicalities of it. You actually get to experience pranayama, experience meditation, experience living yoga, experience kriya, etc. So that's how I would lay it out. Thank you for that question, Jean. And Simone, you're saying, here, I wish I'd done my 200-hour with you. Oh, thank you. And one day I will. I did my 200-hour randomly, and I actually had huge self-doubts after it, as the teacher style was not for me. A clash of style, I think, right? And that's absolutely what can happen. Also, we did very little practice, so I came out not prepared. So thank you for this talk, as it gives me hope to do it again. Wonderful. Yes, I encourage you to do that. And the thing is that now you already have a baseline from that 200 hours. So now if you find the person that you are really inspired with the style that you really want to be emulating and teaching, then you'll thrive on that. It will be like the most exquisite food for your soul. So wonderful. Let's see. James, you're saying perfect timing for this, since I'm just starting to see what's out there. Maybe a silly question, but if I do a Kundalini teacher training and I know what I need to, would I know what I need to teach Vinyasa as well? No. If you did a traditional Kundalini yoga teacher training, you would not know how to teach Vinyasa as well, because they're two very different schools of yoga. Those are my two loves, Vinyasa and Kundalini. And so what I did in the Radiant Body Yoga training was I merged, if you like, so that you would have all the information that you need to know for Vinyasa, but you would also have all of the wisdom and the intelligence of the subtle body teachings of Kundalini Yoga. So, it's finding something, if you're interested, that serves kind of both those needs. So good question. And Lisa, you say, do I have recommendations for teacher training in Illinois? I'm just starting my research now. I actually don't have any recommendations in Illinois, but when you go about your research, just kind of follow the guidelines that I shared, and keep trying out people and schools and looking at recommendations to see which one could work for you. Adair, you are saying, thank you. I'm lucky to have some fantastic teachers to study with. Oh, blessings to that. You're in Rochester, New York. Though you have a firm goal to train with me. Oh, wonderful. I look forward to that. I agree with what you were saying about training with teachers who resonate with us, the ones who seem to know the answers to questions I don't even know to ask. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I look forward to our paths crossing in person. From Ona, I know I'm a bit confused because I love pranayama meditation and the yogic way of life, but for some reason I do not like vinyasa yoga with fast-paced asanas. Do you think I should do a yoga teacher training or maybe consider a Kundalini one? Well, there's so many ways to do vinyasa that really it's about finding, if you don't like vinyasa at all, okay, let it go. Yes, do a Kundalini one. Do you love Kundalini? That's the question. And finding a teacher, again, that resonates with you. But remember, there's many different ways to practice vinyasa. Not all of them are hard, fast-paced. You know, to me, at least, the real intelligence in a vinyasa practice comes through when it's taught very calmly with a deep emphasis on the breath, with very intelligent sequencing and the integration of the philosophical and self-reflection pieces that are so necessary to help us to get to the next level of our understanding and self-connection. So that's what I would say to you on that one. Tracy, you're saying, did I get this right? Will a 200-hour help me to teach seniors with a senior course? Will a senior course come after the 200-hour? So that will depend on your 200-hour. You see, this is where there's a vast difference. If you did a power yoga 200-hour, that wouldn't teach you how to deal with seniors. However, if you did and I'm not saying that you wouldn't get that in power yoga, but you know, the emphasis there is going to be on a fast sort of power practice, so maybe not geared towards seniors, but a very holistic, integrated teacher training will teach you how to teach anyone. So for example, I have a section in my class, my training exactly on how to teach beginners, how to teach seniors, how to connect with those who have injuries, etc. So you would, and people who are pregnant, so you would be learning all of those different subtleties that would give you the skills to know exactly how to connect to seniors. So good question, because especially if you already know the audience that you want to connect with, or if audience is the right word, but you know what I mean, the student that you want to connect with, then make sure that where you're studying that they have that sensitivity themselves. Oh, and there you're saying you love that you've merged the two for your training because that makes a much more versatile and broad teacher. Yeah, right, exactly. So you can speak the language of vinyasa students and draw them into a Kundalini practice. You can also, obviously, the other way around. So you know the language, and then you become a very, very valuable asset at a studio, and that's definitely something to consider, because the more holistic your approach, the more you are going to be able to step into and sub for other teachers. And obviously that's a key aspect of you growing your yoga career. So so that's important. So I was just going to pop my website in here so that you guys can see, if you want to go on and see what's going on there. Okay, and let's see. Amber, you say this is our last question here. Thank you so much for this webinar. Can you please talk a bit more about how to evaluate the lineage of the teachings of a given program? There are so many teacher trainings out there, and I find it hard to judge which ones are more closely linked to the authentic teachings of yoga. I would suggest that you have a conversation with the teachers. Just a pretty, having a conversation, a decent conversation with any one of those teachers will give you an idea of what of their knowledge of yoga and where they're sourcing it from. You can always ask the teachers where their lineage, what their lineage is. Don't be shy about that, because it's a common question in a way, even though on the more sort of outskirts of the evolutionary experimental practices, they may not be very connected to a lineage. But anyone who is connected to a lineage, if you ask them that question, they will tell you right away. They'll be able to trace, you know, where's the root of their teachings, and that will help you to understand where they're coming from, and how much you resonate with. So don't be shy, in other words, to ask questions of people and dig a little bit beneath the surface. Don't take it for surface value, and find out, because you're educating yourself and you want to educate yourself. So thank you all very much for joining me today. As you can see, I love yoga. I love teaching. I especially love teaching teacher trainings, because in empowering others to share these teachings of yoga and positively impact the lives of their loved ones and communities and more, that is the greatest joy for me. And so I wish that for all of you, and sending you so much love and blessings. Namaste.